The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the Galactic Union vessel Seeker of Truth. The sleek, crystalline ship glided silently through the darkness, its blue-green lights pulsing gently as it approached the edge of charted space. Inside the command center, Observer Gray stood with his four arms clasped behind his back, his large eyes blinking slowly as he studied the main view screen. "Observer, we have detected an unknown vessel at coordinates 7-39, reported Navigator Blue, her tentacles dancing across the control panel. "It appears to be moving at sublight speed along the border of Sector 12. Observer Gray's skin shifted from pale green to a curious yellow. "Interesting. We have no record of any Union vessels scheduled for this quadrant. Could it be a trading ship that strayed from its course?" "Unlikely," said Security Officer White, his exoskeleton clicking as he moved closer to the screen. "The vessel's design matches nothing in our database. Its energy signature is unusual." Gray nodded slowly. "A new species, perhaps. This is most exciting. Prepare for first contact protocols. Open a communication channel." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Galactic Union had encountered 17 different intelligent species over the past 3 centuries, and the procedure was well established. Every new civilization was welcomed, scanned, and invited to join the peaceful coalition of planets that spanned this arm of the galaxy. "Channel open, Observer," said Communications Officer Purple, her voice melodic and calm. Gray cleared his throat. "Unknown vessel. This is Observer Gray of the Galactic Union ship Seeker of Truth. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact. Please identify yourselves." For several moments, silence filled the bridge. Then, a crackle of static, followed by a voice that sounded rough and strangely flat to the aliens' hearing. "This is Captain Reed of the Earth vessel Defiance. We acknowledge your transmission and return peaceful greetings." The view screen flickered, and the image of a being appeared. The bridge crew stared in fascination at their first view of a human. Captain Reed had dark hair cut short above a face with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Common features across many species, yet combined in a way that seemed both familiar and alien. "I represent humanity and the United Earth Alliance," Reed continued. "We are on an exploratory mission to expand our knowledge of space beyond our home system." Observer Gray's skin rippled with a pattern denoting respect. "Captain Reed, we are pleased to make your acquaintance. The Galactic Union welcomes peaceful explorers. Would you permit a standard biological and technological scan of your vessel? This is our customary procedure when meeting new species, to ensure compatibility with Union protocols and to begin the process of cultural exchange." On the screen, Captain Reed seemed to consider this request. His face remained mostly still, showing none of the color changes or physical signals that Gray was accustomed to reading. "We would be willing to permit a basic scan," Reed said finally. "However, certain areas of our ship are restricted for security purposes. I hope you understand." Gray's skin flashed a brief pattern of confusion. Security concerns during a peaceful first contact. Most species were eager to share all information. Still, he maintained his diplomatic demeanor. "Of course, Captain. We respect your boundaries. Our scan will only collect standard data about your ship's composition and your species' basic biology. Nothing invasive." Reed nodded. "Proceed with your scan, Seeker of Truth. We'll maintain position." Science Officer Green activated the scanning array, her 6-fingered hands moving with precision across the control surfaces. Initiating standard first contact scan. Parameters set to level 2, respecting privacy restrictions. The scan beam, invisible to the naked eye, swept across the human vessel. Data began to flow into the Seeker's computers, filling multiple screens with information. At first, everything proceeded normally, with basic readings on hull composition, atmospheric content, and radiation levels. Then Science Officer Green made a strange chirping sound, a rare indication of surprise from her usually composed species. "Observer Gray, you need to see this," she said, her voice unusually tight. Gray moved to her station, leaning over to examine the readings. His skin rapidly cycled through colors, green to blue to a deep purple that his crew had rarely seen. "Run the scan again," he ordered. "There must be an error." Green repeated the scan. The results were identical. "What is it?" asked Security Officer White, moving toward them with rapid clicks of his exoskeleton. Gray stared at the screen, then back at the image of the human ship. The Defiance looked deceptively simple from the outside. A long, dark vessel with visible weapon ports and engine nacelles. Nothing that would suggest the readings they were seeing. "The humans," Gray began, then stopped, struggling to find words. "Their biology is unlike anything we've encountered." The data showed creatures that could survive in conditions that would kill most Union species instantly. Their bones were reinforced with calcium deposits that made them incredibly durable. Their skin constantly regenerated itself. Their digestive systems could process substances that would be toxic to most sentient life. Most shocking of all, they contained traces of numerous pathogens living in symbiosis within their bodies. "And their ship," continued Green, her voice barely above a whisper. "The weapons systems are extensive." White leaned closer to the screen, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "These readings can't be correct. If they are, this vessel wasn't designed for exploration. It's a warship." The bridge fell silent. In the 3 centuries of the Galactic Union, warfare between intelligent species had been eliminated. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation. The concept of building vessels specifically designed for combat was considered primitive and obsolete. "Observer," Communications Officer Purple said hesitantly, "Captain Reed is requesting an update. They want to know if our scan is complete." Gray realized he had been staring at the data for nearly 5 minutes without speaking. This was unprecedented, a violation of contact protocol that had never occurred in his 20 years of service. "Tell them." He paused, his skin now a solid deep purple of alarm. "Tell them the scan is complete, and we thank them for their cooperation." Gray turned to face his bridge crew, all of whom were now staring at him with expressions of shock or fear appropriate to their species. "Send this data directly to Union Central," he said quietly. "Priority Alpha. And prepare defensive systems." "Defensive systems," echoed Navigator Blue. "But Observer, first contact protocol specifically prohibits." "I know the protocol," Gray interrupted, his voice firm despite his unease. "But we have never encountered anything like humans before. Until we understand what we're dealing with, we must be cautious." On the view screen, Captain Reed waited patiently, unaware that his simple exploratory vessel had just shattered centuries of Galactic Union certainty in less than 5 minutes. The silence on the bridge of the Seeker of Truth was complete, and it was terrifying. Observer Gray paced the private analysis chamber, his 4 arms alternately clasped behind his back or gesturing at the data displays. His skin flickered between shades of purple and blue as he struggled to process what they had discovered. "Tell me again," he said to Science Officer Green. In simple terms. Green adjusted her viewing apparatus and gestured to the 3-dimensional model of a human that rotated slowly in the center of the room. "These creatures, these humans, are unlike any species we've encountered," she began. "Their bodies are built for something we've never considered necessary. Endurance through damage." Security Officer White clicked his mandibles nervously. "Explain." Green highlighted the human skeletal structure, which glowed red within the hologram. "Their bones can crack and heal multiple times. In fact, they grow stronger at the breaking points. Most Union species have bones that, once broken, remain permanently weakened." She moved to highlight the muscular system. "Their muscles tear and rebuild themselves stronger through a process they must consider normal. What we would call injury, they call exercise." Navigator Blue's tentacles curled in disgust. "That's barbaric." "It gets worse," Green continued, her voice clinical despite her obvious unease. "Their skin is constantly shedding and regenerating. They bleed, intentionally release their internal fluids, and then simply stop bleeding. Their bodies create plugs called scabs to seal wounds temporarily while repairs happen underneath. Observer Gray stared at the hologram. And you're certain this isn't a defect, or some form of medical condition? No, Observer. This is their standard biology. Green highlighted the digestive system next. They eat substances that would kill most of us. Their bodies contain acids strong enough to dissolve metal. And most disturbing of all, she magnified a section showing microscopic organisms. They carry billions of other life forms inside them at all times. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, living in what they call a microbiome. Communications Officer Purple, who had joined them despite not being part of the science team, made a sound of distress. They're walking ecosystems of disease. How are they not constantly ill? Because they've evolved with these organisms, Green explained. They've developed systems to control them, use them, and fight the harmful ones. Their immune system is constantly at war within their bodies. The room fell silent as this information sank in. Then Security Officer White stepped forward and changed the display to show the human ship. The vessel is just as concerning as its occupants, he said. Observer, what do you see here? Gray studied the schematic. A spacecraft. Engines, life support, navigation systems. Nothing unusual. Look closer. White highlighted sections throughout the ship. Redundant systems everywhere. 3 separate ways to generate power. Backup life support that can run at 40% capacity, even if main systems fail. Manual overrides for nearly every automated system. That's inefficient, said Navigator Blue. No. White's mandibles clicked rapidly. It's deliberate. This ship is designed to continue functioning even when severely damaged. And here, he zoomed in on several sections, armor plating up to 3 layers thick in critical areas. Perhaps they come from a hazardous region of space, suggested Purple. Meteor showers or radiation bursts might explain the need for such protection. White zoomed out and highlighted several points along the hull. These are weapon systems, more than would ever be needed for defense against natural phenomena. Some are obvious. These are clearly projectile launchers. Others are concealed or integrated into the ship's design. But that would mean... Observer Gray didn't finish the sentence. Yes, White confirmed. They built this ship expecting to be attacked by other intelligent beings. The implications hung in the air. The Galactic Union had evolved beyond warfare millennia ago. Conflict between species had been eliminated through communication and mutual benefit. The concept of building vessels for combat was archaic, a relic of pre-Union history. There's more, Green said quietly. She touched a control, and the display changed to show readings from the human crew. Their biological responses during our scan were revealing. Heart rates increased, stress hormones released, but not to levels that impaired function. They maintained complete operational efficiency under what they perceived as potential threat. They were ready to fight us, White said flatly. Or run, added Navigator Blue. Their engines are remarkably powerful for a ship that size. Observer Gray moved to the center of the room, his skin now a solid dark blue of deep thought. We need to understand the context. Perhaps they evolved on a world where such traits were necessary for survival. Not all species have had the benefit of peaceful development that Union worlds enjoyed. Or perhaps, White suggested, his voice low, they are conquerors, looking for new territories. No, Gray said firmly. We cannot jump to conclusions. Captain Reed was diplomatic and cautious, but not aggressive. If they meant us harm, they could have fired upon us when they detected our scan. The room fell silent again as each processed this information. Finally, Communications Officer Purple spoke up. Observer, Union protocol requires us to report first contact immediately to Central Command. With these findings, they will likely order a full diplomatic team. What should I tell Captain Reed in the meantime? Gray considered this carefully. The standard protocol would be to invite representatives aboard the Seeker of Truth for initial cultural exchange. But could they risk bringing these humans, these walking biological marvels of resilience and potential disease, onto their ship? Yet refusing such an invitation would signal distrust. It could damage relations with a new species before they properly began. Tell Captain Reed that we are processing their data and preparing a formal welcome, Gray decided. Request that they maintain position for 12 standard hours while we consult with Union Central. Be respectful, but give no indication of our concerns. And if they ask why the delay, Purple inquired. Tell them standard protocol for first contact with a previously unknown species, Gray replied. It's the truth, if not the complete truth. As the others left to carry out their tasks, Gray remained alone with the rotating hologram of the human. He studied it with a mixture of fascination and unease. What kind of world creates creatures built to endure pain, to survive damage, to carry on fighting even when injured? What history led them to build ships ready for war in a galaxy where the Union had known peace for centuries? The silence that had fallen on the bridge earlier now made perfect sense. It wasn't just shock, it was the quiet before a storm. The Union had encountered something unprecedented, and no one knew what it meant for their future. What they did know was that everything had changed. News traveled fast through the Union network. What began as a standard first contact report from a single exploration vessel ballooned into the biggest crisis the Galactic Union had faced in 3 centuries. In the Grand Council chamber on Union Central, representatives from 17 species gathered in an emergency session. The massive room, normally orderly and quiet, buzzed with nervous conversation. Colorful beings of all shapes and sizes gestured with limbs, tentacles, and appendages as they discussed the humans. High Counselor Teal, an ancient being with skin that shimmered like polished metal, called the session to order. The room fell silent. We have all reviewed the data sent by the Seeker of Truth, Teal said, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. Observer Gray has discovered a new species that presents unique challenges. On the main display, images from the scan of the Defiance appeared. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the council viewed the human physiology and ship design for the first time. These humans exhibit biological and technological traits that suggest a history of conflict, continued Teal. They appear built for warfare in ways none of us are. Representative Violet, from a species of scholars known for their rational thinking, raised a slender arm. High Counselor, we must not rush to judgment. Many worlds evolve harsh conditions that require adaptations we might misinterpret. Perhaps, said Representative Black, a bulky being covered in protective plates. But adaptations are one thing. Weapons are another. Their ship bristles with them. The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors argued for caution and diplomatic engagement. Others warned of potential danger to the peaceful Union. The discussion grew heated as discussions ever became in the normally calm council. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Defiance, Intelligence Officer Thompson stood at his station, monitoring Union communications. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied the data flowing across his screen. Captain, he called, turning to face Reed. I've managed to intercept and partially decode their transmissions. There's been a significant increase in communication between the alien vessel and what appears to be their central command. Captain Reed, a tall man with short gray hair and eyes that had seen more battles than he cared to remember, frowned. What's the content? Hard to be certain, Thompson replied, but they're transmitting our scan data repeatedly. The volume suggests it's being shared widely, and I'm detecting emotional markers in their communications. If my analysis is correct, they're showing signs of fear. Chief Engineer Miller looked up from his console. Fear? Of us? We haven't done anything threatening. Sometimes just being different is threatening enough, Reed said quietly. He had seen first contact scenarios go wrong before. Thompson, what's your assessment? Thompson rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The alien response seems disproportionate to a peaceful first contact. They're reacting as if we pose some kind of danger. But why? Asked Medical Officer Park from across the bridge. We've been completely transparent. Maybe that's the problem, Thompson suggested. Remember, we're built differently from most species we've encountered. Our biology, our technology. It's all shaped by Earth's history. Reed nodded slowly. Earth, a planet where everything has evolved to compete, to survive, to fight when necessary. He turned to the main view screen, where the elegant crystalline form of the Seeker of Truth hummed against the backdrop of stars. To them, we might look like creatures bred for war. Back on Union Central, the council debate had reached a critical point. The chamber was divided, but fear was winning. We must act decisively, insisted Representative Black. If these humans are as adaptable and resilient as the scans show, they could spread rapidly. What happens when they discover other Union worlds? Will they see opportunities for conquest? There is no evidence they are conquerors, countered Violet. We know nothing of their culture or values. High Counselor Teal raised his hands for silence. We have a more immediate concern. The scan data has leaked beyond this council. It is spreading across Union networks now. On a secondary display, he showed images from various Union worlds. In public gathering places, citizens were viewing the human data. Reactions varied from curiosity to horror. On one world, public services had been disrupted as citizens retreated to safety bunkers, a security measure unused for generations. Panic is spreading, Teal said gravely. Fear is a powerful force, and many of our citizens have never conceived of a species like humanity. Then we must contain this situation, said Black. I propose we dispatch a security fleet to the Seeker of Truth's location, not to attack, but to ensure these humans do not advance further into Union space until we understand their intentions. The vote was swift and decisive. By a narrow margin, the council approved Black's proposal. A defensive fleet would be mobilized immediately. On the Seeker of Truth, Observer Gray received the council's decision with a heavy heart. His skin had turned a deep blue of concern. They're sending a security fleet, he told his senior officers. 17 vessels, heavily armed by Union standards. Is that necessary? Asked Communications Officer Purple. The humans have made no aggressive moves. The council fears what they don't understand, Gray replied. And I'm afraid our incomplete report has fueled that fear. Security Officer White clicked his mandibles nervously. Observer, we should prepare defensive measures in case the humans react badly to the arrival of a fleet. Gray shook his head. No. Any sign of defensive preparation might be interpreted as hostility. We must maintain open communication and transparency. He turned to Purple. Contact Captain Reed. I need to speak with him immediately. On the bridge of the Defiance, Reed listened carefully as Observer Gray explained the situation. The alien's image on the view screen showed colors shifting rapidly across his skin. A sign of distress, Reed guessed. Captain Reed, Gray said, his voice carefully controlled. I must inform you that additional Union vessels are en route to our location. This is standard protocol for new contact species, but I want to assure you they come in peace. Reed and Thompson exchanged glances. They both recognized a diplomatic half-truth when they heard one. Observer Gray, Reed replied calmly. I appreciate your candor. However, our sensors indicate these approaching vessels are armed. Would you care to explain why peaceful contact requires weapons? Gray's skin flashed purple briefly. Surprise, perhaps. Your sensors can detect our ships at that distance. We have excellent sensors, Reed said simply, and considerable experience with situations that start peaceful and turn otherwise. A tense silence followed. Then Gray's skin settled into a steady blue hue. Captain Reed, the truth is more complicated. Your scan results have caused concern among some council members. These vessels are a precaution, nothing more. I give you my word that no aggressive action is planned. Reed nodded slowly. I understand concern about the unknown. It's a universal reaction. But observer, Please convey to your council that humans also have a universal reaction to being surrounded by armed vessels. We get nervous. What do you propose? Asked Gray. Open dialogue. Direct communication between your council and my superiors, and perhaps most importantly, patience. First impressions can be misleading. In the tense silence that followed, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Fear had spread like wildfire through the Union, but now, faced with the calm reasoning of the very beings they feared, a flicker of doubt began to emerge. Perhaps these humans were not what they seemed after all. The Union security fleet arrived within 12 hours. 17 vessels of various sizes dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their crystalline hulls gleaming against the darkness of space. They moved with perfect coordination to form a hemisphere around the Defiance, leaving the route back toward Earth open. A calculated gesture meant to appear non-threatening while still showing force. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed studied the tactical display with a calm that belied the tension in the room. The human crew stood at their stations, outwardly professional, but with the heightened alertness that came from years of training for exactly this kind of situation. Quite a welcome party, Reed said, his voice dry. Thompson, what's your read? Intelligence Officer Thompson frowned at his console. Their formation is defensive, not offensive. They've left us a clear path to retreat if we choose. But make no mistake, they're positioning for containment. Like we're some kind of disease they don't want spreading, muttered Jones, the weapons officer. Reed shot him a warning glance. Let's not assume the worst. Communication Officer Davis, open a channel to the seeker of truth. Observer Gray's image appeared on the main screen. His skin had taken on a pale yellow color that Reed couldn't interpret. Captain Reed, the alien said, his voice carefully controlled. I see you've noticed our additional vessels. Hard to miss, Reed replied evenly. Observer Gray, I understand caution when meeting a new species, but this show of force suggests more than standard protocol. Gray's skin flashed briefly with blue patches. Embarrassment, perhaps. Captain, I assure you this is merely a precaution. Our council wishes to establish proper diplomatic relations before proceeding further. Reed was about to respond when the ship suddenly rocked violently. What was that? He demanded, grabbing his chair for support. Chief Engineer Miller's voice came over the comm. Sir, we've been hit by some kind of scanning beam, much more powerful than the previous one. It's interfering with our power systems. On the largest Union vessel, the Arbiter of Peace, Commander Gold watched with horror as one of his overreader captains activated a Class 3 penetration scan without authorization. Cease that scan immediately, Gold shouted, his golden skin darkening to orange with anger. Who ordered this? Sir, replied his second-in-command. Captain Azure of the Swift Justice initiated the scan. He claims he detected energy buildups in the human vessel and acted preemptively. Energy buildups, Gold repeated incredulously. Of course there are energy buildups. It's a powered spacecraft. Recall that scan now and put me through to Captain Azure. But it was too late. The damage was done. On the Defiance, red warning lights flashed as systems throughout the ship fluctuated under the powerful scan. They're using a military-grade scanner, Thompson reported, fingers flying over his console. It's disrupting our shield harmonics and weapon systems. This is no scientific scan. It's a tactical probe. Reed's expression hardened. Defensive posture only. Divert power to stabilize affected systems. Do not, I repeat, do not target any alien vessels unless I give the direct order. Engineer Miller's voice came through again. Captain, that scan has knocked out power to sections 12 through 17. We have injured crew members in engineering. Reed's jaw tightened. Medical team to engineering. Jones, status of our defensive systems. Shields at 62% and unstable. Main weapons offline, but point defense grid still operational. Keep those point defenses powered down unless absolutely necessary, Reed ordered. This could still be a misunderstanding. On the Seeker of Truth, Observer Gray watched in dismay as the situation unraveled. "Commander Gold, your vessel Swift Justice has initiated an unauthorized aggressive scan," he said, his skin now an alarming shade of red. "This directly contradicts Council orders for peaceful containment." "I know," Gold replied, his own skin showing distress patterns. "Captain Azure acted without authorization. We're attempting to disengage the scan, but—" A new alert sounded across all Union vessels. The tactical displays showed sudden energy spikes from the human ship. "The humans are activating defensive systems," reported Security Officer White, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "They're bringing weapons online." Gray's heart sank. "Are you certain?" Their captain assured me. "Look at the readings," White insisted. "Power is being rerouted throughout their vessel. And these energy signatures match weapon systems we identified in our initial scan. In truth, the Defiance was merely rerouting power to compensate for damaged systems, but to the Union's inexperienced military observers, the power fluctuations appeared to be preparation for attack." Captain Azure of the Swift Justice had never seen combat. None of the Union captains had. Warfare was a concept studied in historical texts, not a lived reality. When his sensors showed energy redirections within the human vessel, redirections his limited experience interpreted as weapon charging, he panicked. "The humans are preparing to fire," he announced to the fleet. "We must act first." Before Commander Gold could countermand the order, the Swift Justice fired a warning shot. A low-power energy burst that passed close to the Defiance's bow. "Incoming," shouted Jones as the energy burst flashed past the ship. "Point defenses, automatic mode only," ordered Reed. "Engineering, status on main engines." "Operating at 80%, Captain," Miller replied. "We can move if we need to." Reed made a split-second decision. "Navigation, plot a course to withdraw from this system, but execute only on my command." "Communications, get me Observer Gray now." Gray watched in horror as the situation spiraled out of control. The Swift Justice had fired, and now other nervous captains were reporting that the human vessel was activating even more systems they didn't recognize but assumed were weapons. "We cannot let them fire first," insisted Captain Azure, his voice panicked. "Their weapons could destroy half our fleet." "You don't know that," Gray argued desperately. "We have no evidence they intend to attack." But fear was a powerful force. Two more Union vessels fired warning shots, coming even closer to the human ship. On the tactical display, Gray saw the Defiance beginning to move, slowly backing away while maintaining its defensive posture. In engineering on the Defiance, things had gone from bad to worse. The near-miss shots had created power surges through already damaged systems. Engineer Miller and his team worked frantically to stabilize the ship's core functions. "Reroute power from Deck 5. Miller shouted, his face streaked with sweat and blood from a gash on his forehead. "Johnson, bypassed the damaged relays in Section 19. Johnson, her arm hanging uselessly at her side from a dislocated shoulder, used her good arm to rewire a critical junction box. "Bypass complete. We're holding at 63% power." Miller nodded grimly. Despite their injuries, despite the chaos, the engineering team worked with practiced efficiency. This wasn't their first crisis, and their training held firm. On the Union vessels, observers watched in disbelief as the damaged human ship continued to function despite taking hits that would have crippled any Union vessel. "Look at their power readings," whispered Navigator Blue on the Seeker of Truth. "How are they maintaining operation with those damage levels?" "It's as we feared," said Security Officer White grimly. "They're built for war. Their redundant systems allow them to fight even when severely damaged." Observer Gray stared at the screen, watching as the Defiance slowly, deliberately moved away from the Union fleet, not fleeing in panic, but withdrawing in good order, maintaining defensive capabilities. "They're not attacking," he realized suddenly. They could have fired back multiple times. They haven't. But his revelation came too late. The Union fleet, inexperienced and frightened, saw only a dangerous alien vessel that wouldn't go down despite their warnings. More ships prepared to fire. The situation had escalated beyond anyone's control, all because of a misunderstanding about what made humans different and what made them the same as any other intelligent species hoping to survive. As more Union vessels prepared to fire, Intelligence Officer Thompson made a desperate decision. He had been studying the aliens' communication patterns since first contact and had developed a rudimentary understanding of their language structures. "Captain," he said urgently, "permission to broadcast on all frequencies using their communication protocols." Reed nodded sharply. "Do it." Thompson's fingers flew across his console. Instead of using the standard translation system, he crafted a message using the aliens' own communication patterns, including the color-based emotional markers he had observed in their transmissions. The message streamed out from the Defiance on all frequencies, a complex pattern of data that mimicked the Union's own internal communications, embedded with color codes representing peace, truth, and understanding. On the Arbiter of Peace, Commander Gold was about to order a coordinated response to what he perceived as the human vessel's imminent attack when his communications officer gasped. "Commander, the human ship is broadcasting, in our format." The message appeared on the main screen, not as translated text, but as native Union communication glyphs and color patterns. It was imperfect, with obvious errors, but the meaning was unmistakable. "We mean no harm. We defend only. We seek understanding. Please cease fire." The emotional color markers attached to the message, colors that no non-Union species should have been able to reproduce, showed genuine concern, honesty, and a desire for peace. Gold stared at the screen in shock. How could they possibly know our emotional color language? It's not something that could be detected in a simple scan. Observer Gray saw the same message aboard the Seeker of Truth and immediately opened a channel to Commander Gold. "They're trying to communicate directly in our language," he said urgently. "This shows intelligence and adaptability beyond anything we expected. It also shows a clear desire for peace. They could have returned fire, but instead they're reaching out." Gold hesitated, his military training warring with his natural Union inclination toward peace. It could be a trick. "To what end?" Gray countered. "They're damaged and outnumbered. If they wanted conflict, they would have attacked when we first made contact, before reinforcements arrived." After a moment's consideration, Gold nodded. "All vessels, stand down. I repeat, stand down. Do not fire unless fired upon." He turned back to Gray. "Open a direct channel to the human vessel. I want to speak with their captain myself." On the Defiance, Reed received the communication request with cautious relief. He glanced at Thompson, who nodded. "They've ordered their ships to stand down, Captain. I think our message got through." "Let's hope so," Reed said, accepting the transmission. The view screen showed two aliens, Observer Gray, whom they recognized, and a new figure with golden skin that shifted with patterns they were beginning to understand indicated authority and caution. "Captain Reed," the golden alien began, "I am Commander Gold of the Union Security Fleet. I apologize for the unauthorized aggressive scan and subsequent actions. It appears there has been a significant misunderstanding." Reed nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Commander Gold, we understand that first contact situations are delicate. We've had our share of misunderstandings in our own history. Your officer's use of our communication patterns was unexpected," Gold continued. "How were you able to decipher our emotional color language so quickly?" Reed glanced at Thompson, who stepped forward. "Your species communicates emotions visually through skin color changes. Once I recognized the patterns, I was able to correlate them with your text communications. I'm an intelligence officer. Understanding communication is my job." Observer Gray's skin flashed with blue and green. Surprise and admiration. Remarkable adaptability. "This confirms what our scans suggested about your species." "And what exactly did your scans suggest?" Reed asked carefully. Gold and Gray exchanged glances. That you are unlike any species we have encountered, Gold admitted. Your biology, your technology, they speak of a species familiar with hardship and conflict. Which led you to assume we are dangerous? Reed finished for him. Yes, Gray acknowledged. Many in our union feared what your differences might mean. Reed considered this for a moment. Intelligence Officer Thompson, I believe it's time for some context. Thompson nodded and stepped forward. Commander Gold, Observer Gray, there's something you need to understand about humans and Earth. What your scans detected isn't the product of a warlike nature. It's the result of survival. Over the next hour, Thompson explained humanity's history to the Union representatives. He described Earth, a world with extreme environmental variations, powerful natural disasters, and an evolutionary history that rewarded adaptation and resilience. Our bodies heal from injury because our world constantly injured us, he explained. Our ships have redundant systems because we learned that space is unforgiving of single points of failure. We prepare for the worst not because we want conflict, but because we've learned that survival often depends on preparation. As understanding dawned, a delegation from the Union was invited aboard the Defiance, the first official cultural exchange between humans and the Galactic Union. Medical Officer Park watched with fascination as the alien delegation toured the ship's medical bay. Observer Gray seemed particularly interested in the treatment of injured crew members. You're saying this human will recover completely from this bone fracture? Gray asked, his skin showing patterns of disbelief as he observed a crew member with a cast on her arm. Completely, Park confirmed. The bone will actually be stronger at the break point once it heals. Gray's skin rippled with colors of amazement. In most Union species, such an injury would be permanently debilitating. Different evolutionary paths, Park explained gently. You evolved in environments that rewarded other traits. We're not better, just different. In engineering, Chief Engineer Miller proudly showed Commander Gold the ship's power systems. 3 separate methods of generating power, Miller explained, pointing out the different systems: primary, secondary, and emergency. It seems excessive, Gold commented. Miller laughed. To us, it seems like common sense. If one fails, you need another. And if 2 fail, you still have a third, Gold finished, beginning to understand. It's not about warfare, it's about survival. Exactly, Miller agreed. Space is dangerous. Having backups isn't aggression, it's prudence. 2 days later, the Union Council convened an extraordinary session. The chamber that had earlier buzzed with fear now hummed with curiosity as Observer Gray, Commander Gold, and Captain Reed addressed the gathered representatives. Esteemed counselors, Gray began, I present Captain Reed of Earth, representing a species that we initially misunderstood, but now recognize as potential friends. Reed stepped forward, his steady gaze taking in the diverse assembly of alien beings. Members of the Galactic Union, I come in peace on behalf of humanity. Our differences frightened you, and I understand why. But those same differences could make us valuable allies. High Counselor Teal leaned forward. How so, Captain Reed? The traits that alarmed you, our resilience, our redundancy, our ability to function under stress, these could complement the Union's strengths. Where you see potential for conflict, we see potential for cooperation. As Reed spoke, the silence that had fallen over the Union at humanity's discovery transformed. It wasn't the fearful silence of before, but a thoughtful quiet. The silence of minds opening to new possibilities. We don't ask you to trust us immediately, Reed concluded. Trust is earned over time. But we ask for the opportunity to show you who we really are. Not conquerors or warriors, but explorers and survivors who have much to learn from you, and perhaps some things to teach as well. Representative Violet was the first to respond. I move that we establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Their difference is not to be feared, but understood. The vote was unanimous. The silence was broken, replaced by the sound of a new chapter beginning. As Captain Reed shook hands, or appropriate appendages, with the council representatives. Observer Gray approached him. "Captain," Gray said, his skin now a calm blue of curiosity, "I must ask, when we first scanned your ship and reacted with fear, you could have retreated immediately. Why did you stay?" Reed smiled. "Another human trait your scans detected, Observer Gray, curiosity. It's gotten us into trouble throughout our history, but it's also our greatest strength. We couldn't leave without learning more about you." Gray's skin shifted to a new pattern, one that the translation systems identified as laughter. Perhaps our species are not so different after all. The broken silence had given way to conversation, understanding, and the first steps toward friendship between very different civilizations, all because a routine scan had revealed not the horror of an alien enemy, but the wonder of an alien friend.